Prepare to have your health questions answered here on Safe, Effective Natural Solutions with Dr. Todd Binkley, owner of Binkley Healing Center in downtown Ventura. Now, here's Dr. Todd.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Todd Binkley, board-certified doctor of non-force chiropractic and practitioner of functional medicine. Today I'm going to be talking about some safe, effective, natural solutions for mood disorders like depression and anxiety. There's a commonly overlooked or forgotten or at least indefinitely postponed means of dramatically reducing depression and anxiety than anyone can do right now. And I hope that you'll share this show if people you know in your life, people that you love, are suffering from depression, anxiety, related mood disorders. I hope you'll share with them this podcast version of this show, which will be available on my website soon. Tell people how to find that. I hope you'll do that. And in case someone who is listening to this is going through a tough time right now, the most important thing to know is that when you're in a cycle of feeling fantastic and then miserable and then fine again, and then feeling like nothing is ever going to go your way, the most important thing to know about that is emotions are cyclical. You will feel differently in an hour, maybe a day or two, maybe a week, maybe a little bit longer, but things always do change. And of course, many people have experienced this and are still holding on to knowledge and direct experience that their mood will change. But what happens after a few hundred cycles of that, clinging to the hope that things will change, and time passes and they don't? Well, a key focus of my practice has always been identifying nutrient deficiencies based on objective testing that can be supplemented in the short term to break that cycle, to get you back the energy you need, relief from pain, stiffness, even directly relieve anxiety, fatigue, whatever other symptoms are stopping you from getting back to the place where you used to feel great. So today I'm excited to share some information that was in the news again this week that I probably don't talk enough about on this show. How exercise fights anxiety and depression. Some major articles came out in the news this week on this subject, and when it comes to mental health, most treatments for conditions like depression and anxiety come with caveats. Medications work for some symptoms, but can exacerbate others. Cognitive behavioral therapy is effective for many patients, but not all. So there's one strategy that seems to work for most people, and almost all experts endorse, and that is regular exercise. So I'm pretty sure most of you already know about this or have at least heard about it, but I'm also constantly reminded of the benefits of exercise in ways that perhaps you and people you love might not be. So I'm wondering if I should be mentioning this more often. So here goes. Many decades of research have established the fact that exercise has a positive effect on mental health. For example, here's a study published in the Journal of American Medical Association in April of 2024 titled Physical Fitness Among Children and Adolescents May Protect Against Developing Depressive Symptoms, Anxiety, and Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So the study found that better performance in cardiovascular activities, as well as strength and muscular endurance, were each associated with greater protection against mental health conditions. And they deemed this linkage dose-dependent, meaning that a child or adolescent who is more fit is accordingly less likely to experience the onset of a mental health disorder. And these findings come amid a surge of mental health diagnoses among children in the United States and around the world. And so it's a really important thing to understand and to pass on. So this is a study conducted by researchers in Taiwan that compared data from two large data sets, the Taiwan National Student Fitness Test, which measures student fitness performance in schools, and the National Insurance Research Database, which records medical claims, diagnoses, prescriptions, and other medical information. So they were able to use this anonymized data to compare the students' physical fitness and mental health results. And they measured physical fitness in three ways. Cardio fitness, they measured by doing a student's time in an 800-meter run. Muscle endurance, by the number of sit-ups they could perform. And muscle power, measured by a standing broad jump. Improved performance in each activity was linked with a lower risk of mental health disorder. For example, a 30-second decrease in the 800-meter time was associated in girls with a lower risk of depression, anxiety, and ADHD. In boys, it was associated with lower anxiety and risk of the disorder. An increase of 5 sit-ups per minute was associated with lower anxiety and risk of anxiety in boys and decreased risk of depression and anxiety in girls. So even small amounts and increase in improvement in physical fitness dramatically reduced their risk of these mental disorders. So that's pretty exciting because it shows that even modest improvements in an exercise routine can make dramatic improvements on risk and severity of mental health disorders. But that's on kids, right? They're resilient. They respond quickly or more quickly to anything. So what about adults? Well, here's another study. It was published in the British Medical Journal in January of 2024. In patients with mild to moderate depression, a wide range of exercise regimens has been shown to be as effective as medications like SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These are the most common treatments for anxiety and depression medications like Zoloft, Prozac, Paxil, Lexapro. It is important to recognize that a lot of times these medications are necessary when someone is in a crisis, and this study, in fact, showed that the best results generally involved a combination of medications and exercise. Well, I like to practice what I preach. When I'm in my office seeing patients, I am on my feet most of the day, and I stretch for at least 30 to 45 minutes every day, sometimes for 2 or 3 hours. I also love cycling, and I do some strength training at least once a week. But over the past 35 years in practice, I've seen how difficult it can be for so many people to do any kind of exercise. Maybe they might be in pain or just have stiffness, arthritis, or still be suffering from the effects of old injuries, or just be fatigued, just have so much fatigue, just be so tired all the time from work or any number of things that may be going on, which we can often identify. But the bottom line is if they can't do it, then recommending more exercise is not going to help them in that moment. And of course, time is always a factor. You do have to put in the time to do exercise. But if you're truly motivated to make a change, there is always a way to incorporate a little more movement into your daily and weekly routines. There's nearly always a way to identify a few gentle stretches and strength training exercises that you can do wherever you are now. And, sometimes that requires some instruction, but walking is something that anyone can do. It's the simplest thing, no equipment required, no memberships. And, if you're creative, if you look around, you can find a way to make it fun. Make it fun and easy. The best exercise anyone should do, the best exercise for you, is the one that you can make fun, that you can incorporate easily into your life so that you will do it regularly. Well, how about a quick walk around the block? Like a 20 or 30-minute walk first thing in the morning when no one else is out in your own neighborhood. There's one of the easiest ways to get yourself moving. It's free. It's a fantastic way to start the day. Cool, fresh air, mostly quiet. You can listen to the birds in the trees. Check out what your neighbors are up to. When I'm going on morning walks, I like to check out people's yards, people's landscapes. I notice other people, interesting things that people have planted when I'm driving by on the way to and from work or cycling. But if you're out walking, you can check them out up close in detail, even snap a couple of pictures of things I like for ideas, and often even meet those neighbors and even make a new friend or two. I'm Dr. Todd Binkley. You're listening to Safe, Effective, Natural Solutions to Almost Any Health Challenge. Today, specifically, the challenge of maintaining good mental health. Ways to reduce depression and anxiety directly with exercise, regular exercise, and much less exercise than you might have suspected. Moving regularly can also improve sleep and reduce stress. Here's another study that was published in the International Journal of Behavioral Nutrition and Physical Activity in June of 2024, titled The Impact of Exercise on Depression, How Moving Makes Your Brain and Body Make Your Brain Feel Better and Your Body. And mainly through endorphin production, which are neurotransmitters associated with positive mood and feelings of well-being. And they documented how exercise significantly improves sleep, reduces stress and anxiety, and enhances self-esteem and social support. Of course, it's easy for anyone to demonstrate this to themselves by just simply getting out and moving around. But if you're struggling to do that or forgotten how great it can feel to do that, and you're just wondering, hopefully providing evidence like these studies I'm citing today will motivate you to get out and do something if you're not already, or maybe something that you can share with others to motivate them. So here's another study, Exercise and Mental Health, published in the journal Maturitas, the official journal of the European Menopause and Andropause Society. It's an international, multidisciplinary, peer-reviewed journal of midlife health. And they outlined several other mechanisms by which exercise improves mood and mental health. And so these include, they're a little bit technical, but they include things like the endorphin hypothesis, thermogenic hypothesis, improvements in mitochondrial dysfunction, the mammalian target of rapamycin, that's one I've not heard of, neurotransmitter dysfunction, and HPA axis, which is mainly referring to adrenal function, adrenal fatigue, exhaustion from stress. And so all of these have some data, significant enough data, to suggest that they're important components of this phenomenon of how exercise helps mental health, that they are all undergoing specific studies to expand on them. So hopefully we'll find out more about that later. And if you're involved in team sports, this will be obvious. If you're a parent with a child that's in team sports, this is obvious. But if you're somebody who lives on your own, or you know someone who lives on their own, it may help them to understand that exercise routines and sports help provide a distraction from negative thoughts and ruminations, and directly provide a boost in self-esteem by mastering something, becoming accomplished in a skill that you perhaps may be new to you. And then just the social aspect of physical activity with other people can provide a great outlet for people suffering from depression, anxiety, or any form of stress. Chronic inflammation, which underlies so many diseases of aging especially, has also been attributed as a cause of depression and poor mental health. And there's a growing body of evidence linking the immune and the nervous systems. There has been actually for a long time. This article is saying that it's presenting it as though it's something new. We've actually known a lot about that for quite a long time. But anyway, it's increasingly clear that the immune system plays a vital part in the development of mental health disorders, including anxiety and depression. And there are so many ways to reduce inflammation with better food, with exercise, with better food, with some certain nutrients that you can take. You can test inflammatory markers to see how inflamed your system is right now with blood tests like C-reactive protein, erythrocyte sedimentation rate, ESR, which measures the viscosity of your blood. Your blood gets thicker when you have a lot of inflammatory debris floating around in it. And there's a whole host of other blood tests that you can use to measure how inflamed you are right now, even if you don't feel particularly inflamed. And then use that as a metric to try something new to reduce inflammation and measure it again to make sure that you're getting the improvement you're looking for. But today we're focusing on exercise. And you may have heard, and if you haven't, research definitely has supported for a long time that the main cardiovascular benefits, reducing your risk of heart disease and dementia, those two always go together, weight loss, all the many other general health benefits that you can get from exercising are generally best attained by exercising something like 30 to 45 minutes a day. 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week, 45 minutes a day, 3 times a week, something in that range. And the connection between mental health benefits from exercise are the same. 45 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. For example, this is a study published in the British journal Lancet Psychiatry, a study on 1.2 million Americans from 2011 to 2015, and those who exercised had 43% fewer days of poor mental health in the previous month than those who did not exercise. And all the exercise types, any kind of exercise basically, they showed has a lower risk of mental health burden, but it ranged from 12 to 22% compared to not exercising. The largest associations were seen for popular team sports and cycling, 22% lower, and aerobic and gym activities, 20% lower, as well as doing any kind of exercise for at least 45 minutes at a frequency of 3 to 5 times per week. So this isn't really news. Most people have heard that. Something in that range is the ideal frequency of exercise to do. But this is a study of 1.2 million people. So if you ever had any doubts whether it was worth to do 30 minutes instead of 20 minutes or 5 times a week instead of 3 times a week, that little extra push, if you can manage it, or if you're already doing it, good for you. And if you're not, then if you're not doing anything like that amount of exercise, if there's no way you can just imagine doing exercise for that long or 3 to 5 days a week, if you're only able to do it once a week or for a far fewer period of time, because of fatigue, because of arthritis, because of weight, because of a whole host of issues that can make it virtually impossible to exercise for some people in certain situations, then there is also hope. Here is another study that was published in the Proceedings of the Natural Academy of Sciences in September of 2024 about rapid stimulation of human dentate gyrus function with acute mild exercise. So what does that mean? Well, the human dentate gyrus function is a part of the brain associated with improved memory function. 10 seconds of mild, almost languorous exercise can immediately alter how certain parts of the brain communicate and coordinate with one another to improve memory function. Is basically what this study is showing. So actually, this is suggesting, at least for brain health, that exercise does not need to be prolonged or intense. It will still benefit the brain, and the effects can begin far more quickly than we previously suspected. Multiple studies with mice and rats have found that when animals run on wheels or treadmills, they develop more new brain cells than if they remain sedentary, and many of these cells are clustered in the hippocampus, a part of the brain that's essential for memory creation and storage. And these animals also performed better on tests of learning and memory. Well, the hippocampus is the part of the brain that's first damaged or destroyed in most patients with Alzheimer's disease. That is the part where you form new memories. So if you've ever known somebody who's had dementia, you've probably noticed that they have a lot of their older memories. They just have difficulty remembering anything that just happened, because that part of the brain that forms and deposits and stores new memories is the part that is hit first. So in these animal studies, they're showing that exercise is literally directly improving those most important cells. Well, to be clear, they weren't putting these rats and mice in MRI scans to see changes in their brain. To see this level of detail and specific types of cellular improvement, they have to do an autopsy. So it's not possible to do equivalent experiments examining the brain tissue in people, but some past studies have shown that people who exercise regularly have larger, healthier hippocampus cells, tissue, than those who do not, especially as they grow older. And even one bout of exercise, this research is suggesting, can help most of us focus and learn better than if we sit still. But most of these studies have involved moderate or vigorous exercise, such as jogging or brisk walking, and often for weeks or months at a time. So the idea that a single brief spurt of very easily performed exercise would produce desirable changes in the brain has never really been shown before. So this new study, which is published in September of 2024 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, scientists from the University of California in Irvine and the University of Tsukuba in Japan used a group of healthy young college students, in part because they're easy to come by on college campuses, but also because bright, healthy young men and women should have brains and memories that are already functioning well. So for any kind of experiment to produce improvements in their brain function, its effects would need to be pretty potent to improve upon a young person's brain that's already should be perfectly healthy. So the scientists invited the students into the lab and had them sit quietly on a stationary bicycle for 10 minutes, or on a separate visit, pedal the bicycle at a pace so gentle it barely even raised their heart rates. So just to confirm how technically they did this, it's really impressive what they did. They measured this exercise to be performed at 30% of each volunteer's heart rate reserve, which is the difference between their maximum heart rate and their resting heart rate. So in other words, you test their resting heart rate, you test their maximum heart rate. The difference between those two is the reserve, what they have available to tap into very quickly. And this is performed at only 30% of that. So that is verifying that this is really gentle exercise, basically, that anybody can do. And by comparison, brisk walking would normally raise someone's heart reserve rate to about 50%. So this is really easy exercise. And it was only for 10 minutes. Well, immediately after each session of sitting or slow pedaling, the students completed a computerized memory test, which they would see a brief picture, for instance, of a tree, followed by a variety of other images, and then a new image of either the same tree or a similar one. The students would press buttons to show whether they thought the image that they saw was a new one or the same as the earlier shot. So this test is difficult because since many of the images closely resemble one another, it requires rapid shuffling through recent memories to decide whether a picture of a tree is the same one they saw before or a new one. So then the scientists had each student repeat this sequence, riding or sitting on a bike for 10 minutes and then completing the memory testing. But the testing now took place inside an MRI machine that scanned their brains while they responded to the images, and then they compared the results. Well, the effects of exercise, undemanding as it was, were clear. The young people were better at remembering images after they had ridden the bike, especially when the images most closely resembled one another. In other words, the harder their memories had to strain, the better they performed after exercise. And more unexpectedly, their brains also worked differently after they had ridden. The MRI scans showed that the portions of each student's hippocampus that's so important for creating new memories lit up in synchronized fashion with the parts of the brain associated with learning, indicating that these physically separate parts of the brain were better connected now than when the students had not exercised. So that's amazing, and that's showing that, that better than any research I've ever seen before, how directly even a brief 10-minute period of gentle exercise is directly affecting and improving and potentially restoring brain function. So the greater the coordination between these disparate parts of the brain, the better the students performed on the memory test. So it's exciting to see these effects occurring so quickly. And they show that exercise can change people's brains right away without requiring weeks of workout and with minimal exertion. Basically, exercise that anyone can do. I'm Dr. Todd Binkley. You're listening to Safe, Effective, Natural Solutions to Almost Any Health Challenge. Before we finish up today, I want to do an update. Last 2 episodes, I talked about osteoporosis, and one of the things I mentioned, trying to give women who are a little heavier a break on other things they have to worry about. It is true that if you are heavier, and especially thicker boned and densely built, you have a much lower risk of osteoporosis than thin women. So thin women have a much higher risk of osteoporosis. But that's mainly thin, middle-aged to younger women. Postmenopausal women who are obese actually have a higher risk of ankle and upper leg fractures. So this is a study that just came out since that past episode, just this past week. The American Journal of Medicine published a study saying that obesity is not protective against fracture in postmenopausal women. Well, why is that? Well, what's the main feature of postmenopause? Low estrogen. And estrogen is a key part of metabolism that promotes the activity of the osteoblasts, the bone-building cells, which are the cells that make bone. And when a person has low levels of estrogen, they have an increased risk of osteoporosis and fractures. So when a person has low level of estrogen and they're obese, the combination of those two is going to be even worse. Low estrogen also contributes to obesity in multiple ways that are just beginning to be understood. But of course, if you have a reduced capacity to rebuild bone and extra weight being carried by those bones, both of those things are going to increase your risk of fracture. So it is a good idea for any woman, even heavier women over a certain age, if you have had fractures before, or if you find that a fracture takes more time to heal, or if you have a family history of fractures, then it may be a good idea to get a bone density scan as early as in your 50s, as opposed to waiting to the standard age 65 or more. And then if you have good bone density or not, and you can take certain steps to improve that bone density with the nutrients that your body needs to heal and repair bone all the time. So if you have any questions about osteoporosis, about how you can incorporate exercise, or if you're having difficulty, if anything is stopping you from exercising, if you or someone you love is so stiff or in pain that they can't exercise, then I can probably help you, and I'd love an opportunity to identify ways to make it easier for you to exercise. If you just have unrelenting fatigue, there are a couple of dozen things that most doctors never even check for that contribute to fatigue, which almost never has one cause. It's a number of factors combining to make you feel exhausted all the time, and that we can identify those things on appropriate testing and get you feeling better. As always, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful weekend.
You've been listening to Safe, Effective, Natural Solutions with Dr. Todd Binkley. If you have a health question you want discussed on the show, email your health questions to Dr. Binkley at binkleyhealingcenter.com. Take advantage of this opportunity to ask questions for yourself and for your loved ones, because our health matters. Join him next Friday at 2 p.m. for safe, effective natural solutions here on 98.3 FM, The Word.